2007, Crackdown delighted Xbox 360 players by casting them as a futuristic super cop who, through vigorous jumping, driving, and shooting, could actively enhance his abilities and extend his influence over a large urban landscape. Now it's 2010, and Crackdown 2 is hoping to delight Xbox 360 players with pretty much the same thing. You are once again cast as a powerful law enforcement agent charged with cleaning up Pacific City. Your powers increase as you use them, and striving to jump higher and punch harder can be addictively satisfying. You can cause a lot of mayhem across the city, and there are no shortage of new objectives to keep you busy. Yet despite the abundance of things to do, Crackdown 2 often feels like a shallow experience. There's no proper story to spur you onward, and you spend the majority of the campaign with the same handful of mission types. Bringing a friend or three into the action livens things up, but all the different kinds of fun you can have in the game are tainted by one issue or another, and the more you play, the more these problems become evident. Nevertheless, even though Crackdown 2 is flawed and doesn't do much in the way of innovation, there's still plenty of entertaining action here for those interested in leaping tall buildings in a single bound. Crackdown 2 takes place in Pacific City. Geographically speaking, it's the same Pacific City that players explored in the first Crackdown, though time has not been kind to it. Buildings are crumbling, roadways are disrupted, and it generally feels like a more conflict-torn environment. The visuals are improved, and once again the cel-shaded outlines mix well with more realistic textures, creating a distinctive look. Yet Crackdown 2 isn't exactly pretty. Environmental details don't stand up well to close inspection, and explosions, of which there are many, don't look very good at all. Still, it is fun to explore the city, and it is fun to blow stuff up, and the absence of loading times makes doing both much easier. In fact, exploring the city is one of the most entertaining parts of Crackdown 2, thanks largely to the liberal placement of attribute-boosting orbs throughout the city. Green agility orbs perch on rooftops, encouraging you to climb to new heights, while white hidden orbs reward curious and thorough explorers. Most orbs are stationary, but two types of renegade orbs will flee from you, baiting you to give chase on foot or in a car. Every orb glows brightly, and once you've spotted one, it's very difficult to resist grabbing it. Collecting orbs is oh so satisfying, and with hundreds of them scattered around the city, it's easy to get caught up in an addictive orb-snatching binge. The downside of this binging is that while leaping high into the air can be exhilarating, climbing structures can be aggravating. It can be tough to tell which parts of the building you will be able to grab onto and what parts you won't. After a while you develop a good eye for the environment, but there's still the looming problem of ledge detection. Crackdown 2 is inconsistent in this respect, so you may jump at the side of a building to grab what you know to be a ledge, only to fall impotently to the ground many stories below. Sometimes your leaping skills allow you to regain your position easily, but the higher you climb, the more time and effort you stand to lose as a result of this flaw. This makes climbing tall buildings nerve-wracking, not just because it's tricky, but because at any moment you could fall victim to Crackdown 2's inconsistency and plummet to earth. Fortunately, though it is aggravating, this problem isn't bad enough to ruin the fun of exploration and orb collection. The other collectibles to be found in Pacific City are audio logs, which come in a number of varieties and shed light on your enemy's agenda and other threats to public safety.
I wish I could tell you this will be over soon.
These voiced snippets are the only substantial form of plot development in Crackdown 2, but they're few and far between. You get the feeling that there's some mildly interesting stuff going on, but unless you scour the city, the opening cutscene is all the plot you're going to get for the majority of the game.
Get after that orb, Agent, fast! You only need to touch it.
There's a disembodied narrator who accompanies you wherever you go, and he is initially helpful and somewhat amusing, but after a while his shtick gets old. He starts repeating himself and you'll want to turn him off. The option screen allows this, but in doing so you also shut out the audio log voiceovers, which you actually do want to hear. It's not a great system. Fortunately, there are plenty of bad guys to help you vent your frustration. The enemies arrayed against you come in two varieties, human and not so human. Your human enemies are the Cell, a group dedicated to fighting you and your agency. Your other enemies are the Freaks, zombie-like creatures that overrun the city at night, killing anyone they can get their claws on. At the outset of the game, you're told about both factions, assigned a few different combat-based objective types, and set loose in the city. Fighting men and monsters can be fun, and increasing your arsenal and melee strength is rewarding. The deadly accuracy of the harpoon gun and the Jedi-like power of the UV shotgun are particular highlights, and the weapons you find in the environment can be just as fun. Bashing enemies with lampposts, bus stations and cars is an enjoyable way to flex your power, but combat in Crackdown 2 is pretty simplistic. In the early going, you can shoot and punch your way through enemies fairly easily, and when things get tough, the tough jump around with a rocket launcher and duck behind buildings to regenerate health. Laying waste to lots of enemies is inherently satisfying, as long as you don't get caught by knockdown attacks or explosions. Both will cause you to ragdoll and roll around limply for an annoying amount of time, leaving you powerless to defend yourself against repeated attacks. It has its moments, but eventually combat loses its luster because your enemy encounters don't vary greatly, and they become repetitive. You can mix things up by driving around the city in any car you choose to get into, or by summoning an agency car at a drop point. The agency cars handle the best and have special abilities, making them the most fun, though other cars have radios installed so you can hear actual music while you drive. The cracked pavement can give you some trouble, but races, stunt rings, and renegade orbs provide good incentive to get behind the wheel. Just be ready for some trouble if you drive during the day. Pacific City's civilians think nothing of gathering en masse and wandering into the street in an effort to become roadkill, and God help you if you ever hop a corner. It's very difficult not to massacre civilians while driving, and the violent police retaliation against you is the annoying result. The Crackdown 2 campaign can be played cooperatively over Xbox Live, with up to 4 players simultaneously romping around one city. Each player keeps their attribute and orb grabbing progress, and there are some orbs that can only be collected with at least 2 players present. More company makes things more enjoyable, and though only the host gets to keep campaign-related progress, there's more than enough opportunity for cooperative, or not-so-cooperative fun to make teaming up worthwhile. The competitive multiplayer is not so worthwhile, offering a paltry 3 modes that cover the basics but don't offer a particularly enjoyable or deep experience. Yet, Crackdown 2 is an enjoyable game. Exploring the vast city, grabbing orbs, pulling off stunts, and flexing your abilities can keep you entertained for hours, and it's even more fun with a friend in tow. The lack of narrative makes the campaign feel directionless and repetitive, and the different flavors of action are all tainted in one way or another. Those with high hopes for a stellar sequel will be disappointed, but Crackdown 2's core action and appeal remains very strong, making it a fun stop on your summer video game tour.